So it's that time of the year again. The moment when the titles that premiered at Cannes, Venice, Toronto, and Telluride finally find distributors and reach audiences, and the Hollywood majors start pushing their Oscar hopefuls. Kickstarting this awards season is Paul Thomas Anderson's latest, his 10th feature overall. An ambitious, expensive project with a $150 million price tag, the highest of his career, and a film that might just prove to be too divisive, too polarizing to actually take home any statuettes. But controversies aside, the real questions are, where does this film sit within PTA's filmography, and why should you make time to watch it? And here I am to answer these questions. I'm Pedro from Vinyl N Celluloid, and this is my review of One Battle After Another. Warner Brothers' 2025 release slate has been interesting to say the least. The year started with two prestige titles, Barry Levinson's Alto Nights and Bong Joon-ho's Mickey 17, both of which underwhelmed commercially and critically. For a moment, it looked like disaster for the iconic studio. But then, almost overnight, the majors' fortunes turned. The rest of the year's slate, films that clicked both with audiences and critics, put Warner back on the map. And now comes their last major release of the year, and arguably their better shot at Oscar Gold, Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another. But this road to success isn't without challenges. After all, this is a film with a mountain to climb, both at the box office and on the awards trail. Right now, it sits as the frontrunner for Best Picture, but if history has taught us anything, is that frontrunners carry a giant target on their backs. Every move is scrutinized, every flaw magnified, and controversies seem to materialize out of thin air. But here's the thing, beyond the awards chatter, One Battle After Another is simply a terrific movie. One that proves tackling difficult topics can pay off, especially when released in the kind of socially and politically fractured moment America and the West at large find themselves in. In a way, Anderson's latest feels like a final breath of courage and bravado from Hollywood majors willing to bankroll risky projects. And if you're not convinced by the noble act of supporting Auteur on the big stage, let me give you 4 concrete reasons why this movie demands to be seen on the biggest screen possible. But before we get into the reasons why this film works, and works very well, let's quickly recap what the title is about. Leonardo DiCaprio plays Bob Ferguson, a former member of the far-left paramilitary group known as French 75. Alongside Perfidia Beverly Hills, the group fought injustices and even staged missions to rescue captured illegal immigrants. Their activities eventually put them on a collision course with commanding officer Stephen Lockjaw, played by Sean Penn. After a violent confrontation with the military and police, French 75 disbands, with its members scattering and going into hiding. Fast forward 16 years, and we find Bob now living under a new identity. He's consumed by paranoia, numbed by drugs and alcohol, and fiercely overprotective of the daughter he fathered with Perfidia, Willa. Meanwhile, Lockjaw hasn't let go of the past. He's still pursuing his own agenda, still obsessed with tracking down the remnants of French 75. Now, as you can probably tell from this brief description and from everything I said so far, this movie is very current. Loosely inspired by Thomas Pynchon's novel Vineland, itself a controversial work with sharp social critique, One Battle After Another dives straight into the fractures of modern society. Immigration, racial tensions, the clashes between military and paramilitary forces, violence, ideology, and the structures that prop up every side of the political spectrum. Tackling a project this controversial, dealing with topics this hot, is no small feat. And that's why Paul Thomas Anderson deserves credit, because he proves, once again, he's up to the task. And this is exactly the first reason why you should watch One Battle After Another. We've seen plenty of recent examples that show just how fine the line is between satire and accuracy when commenting on current events. For the last few years, Alex Garland has given us political dramas so hesitant, so unwilling to take a stance, that they end up feeling apolitical altogether. Films that dance around the issues without ever committing to a message or a side. On the other end of the spectrum, Ari Aster's Eddington leaning fully into satire, but in doing so reduce its characters and most importantly the message to little more than caricatures. Instead of making a point, it just made noise. Instead of telling a story, it just reinforced stereotypes.
Why don't you like Edison that much?
Anderson cleverly avoids both traps. He commits to his subject matter without preaching, and he portrays the characters without turning them into cartoons. That balance, relevant but not preachy, is what makes this film so powerful. And this is the first thing that Anderson's latest does exceptionally well. He delivers this critique and analysis by focusing on the individuals at the heart of the story, namely Sean Penn's Lockjaw and DiCaprio's Ferguson in particular. The director examines them from all angles: their personal motivations, their quirks and flaws, their private lives, and also how they function within the larger machinery of ideology. Instead of painting them as symbols or mouthpieces, he shows them as fully realized people. And that's why the satirical aspects of this movie work. They're grounded in character, not caricature. By highlighting the personal missions these characters undertake, their loyalty, sense of duty, personal responsibility, and the way they define themselves through these commitments, the title reveals unexpected overlaps. It shows that even figures on opposite sides of the ideological battlefield can share common ground. And those areas of overlap, those spaces where humanity cuts across politics, are what the movie suggests we need most. They are what can promote a healthier discourse, and, in my opinion, they point to the only real way forward, the way to begin healing divides. The film exalts both the virtues and the vices of its players, making it clear that neither side is without flaws. It even introduces a grounded psychosexual motif, unlikely as that sounds, that becomes a critical piece in justifying certain actions and in finding additional layers of common ground between conservatives and liberals. From there, Anderson takes a deep dive into the individual aspirations that drive the characters, refusing to pass judgment or offer direct criticism. The story unfolds through observation, not indoctrination, exposing the dangers of blind faith in either side of the political barricade. And that's where the movie succeeds the most. It manages to do what very few titles, and very few politicians for that matter, are able to do: connect with individuals, on screen and in the audience. Of course, one of the secrets to this movie's success sits with the acting. This is a common aspect to all of Anderson's previous 9 titles. The Auteur dials back his Altman-esque sprawl. Instead of juggling a massive ensemble, with the penchant for large casts displayed in his earlier titles, combined with a more cohesive focus that has come to define his work since 2002. The result is a smaller circle of characters, each fully fleshed out and essential to the story. Casting-wise, the film is superb. DiCaprio delivered an award-worthy performance as Bob Ferguson, channeling Pynchon's trademark paranoia, whilst blending it with paternal instinct, stubborn resolve, and the hazy disorientation of a man consumed by drinks and drugs. It's a nuanced, restrained turn, and it highlights something I hadn't fully appreciated about DiCaprio's recent work. In his last few films, he's leaned into zanier, more outlandish personas that tap into insecurity and uncertainty, often contrasted against steadier co-stars. Think Brad Pitt's cool, collected Cliff Booth in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, or even Robert De Niro's measured presence in Killers of the Flower Moon. Here he plays the same bumbling foil, not to one counterpart, but to an entire cast. And what a cast! Sean Penn's Colonel Stephen Lockjaw may very well be the standout. He's a character who can make you cry, laugh, hate, and pity, sometimes all in the same moment. Less a man than an embodiment of our own internal conflicts: pride and insecurity, compassion and cruelty, patriotism and paranoia. Penn plays him with such ferocity that the line between villain and tragic anti-hero collapses. At this stage, he feels like the de facto frontrunner for Best Supporting Actor. But, as compelling as Penn and DiCaprio are, the rest of the ensemble shines too. Regina Hall, Tiana Taylor, and Benicio del Toro all deliver terrific supporting turns. And then there's Chase Infinity as Willa Ferguson, Bob's daughter. A newcomer with undeniable presence, she steals the show. If the film is any indication, she's a star in the making, and I think we'll be seeing great performances from her for years to come. Now, the third reason this movie excels, and why you should absolutely watch it, sits in its execution and technical mastery. Though I'm not entirely sure we see every cent of that $150 million budget on screen, we do see Paul Thomas Anderson for the 10th time in a row unleashing his creativity in his favorite playground, the state of California. The Auteur's fingerprints are everywhere. The sharp editing, the razor-edged dialogue, the striking cinematography that captures both grit and beauty in the same frame. His style is instantly recognizable, yet here it feels even more refined. Every choice purposeful, every frame deliberate. One of the real highlights, at least in my book, is Anderson's innovative approach to shooting action. Instead of long, loud, fast-edited car chases that we've seen 1,000 times before, he takes a more subtle, restrained angle. By staging road sequences in a hilly setting, he uses the limited point of view, what you can see ahead of the car and what you can't, to build tension. It's simple but masterful, and it works beautifully. And it even makes you wonder, if Anderson had gotten his wish to direct a Mission Impossible entry, what would he have done with it? This film surely gives us a taste. And then there's another Anderson staple, the soundtrack. An eclectic, superb jukebox roulette that spins from Ella Fitzgerald to Steely Dan, Tom Petty, Jackson 5, and more. Complementing these needle drops is Jonny Greenwood's original score. Anderson's longtime collaborator once again proves indispensable. His music here is completely evocative of both Pynchon's novel and the film's tone, a modernist touch, blended with jazzy flourishes that perfectly mirror the story's duality. Comedy and drama, past and future, serious and trivial. Finally, this movie feels like the culmination of Paul Thomas Anderson's body of work. Now, don't get me wrong, you don't need to have seen a single PTA film to appreciate one battle after another. It stands on its own. But for those of us who've been following his career for decades, it feels like another stellar effort that ranks right up there with his best. You can see the threads woven in from his past films, the ideological versus individual conflict that shaped the master, the wide range of characters from all walks of life, each shaped by their environment, like in Boogie Nights and Magnolia, the keen eye for social context that made There Will Be Blood so powerful, and even a touch of the nuanced fun we saw more recently in Licorice Pizza. As I already mentioned, Anderson refuses to judge, but he's keen to expose flaws in entrenched systems, whether that's those in power or those trying to upend it. His goal isn't to lecture, it is to spark a conversation between polar opposites. The film's unpredictability, the tonal shifts, and the way it moves from absurd to deadly serious, all of this places one battle after another in a unique space. It lives somewhere between the daring risk-taking spirit of the 1970s New Hollywood titles and the more pointed message movies of today. And what makes it even bolder is that the director, someone we can assume of left-leaning tendencies, doesn't shy away from skewering the very people he often aligns with. That's not just rare, it's almost unheard of in today's polarized climate. And to top it all off, just when you least expect it, he throws in a Van Halen reference. For me, a gold standard moment in any movie. When you put this all together, you've got a title that feels fearless and one that's bound to make waves. So when all is said and done, One Battle After Another may very well win at the Oscars and finally give the director the recognition he long deserves. Then again, it may not. The hefty price tag and current box office forecasts, with a projected $45 million opening weekend worldwide, suggest the movie may struggle to break even. This is something that has long been predicted by pundits. Now, this scenario could push Warner to drop it into streaming sooner rather than later. If that happens, it's a mixed blessing. On one hand, the film is designed to be experienced on the biggest screen possible. Think IMAX. On the other, streaming would open it up to a wider audience, especially those put off by its cryptic promotional material and/or its 2.5-hour runtime. And if more people see it, that could still shape the conversation come awards season. But in a nutshell, gutsy, bold, risky, One Battle After Another is a perfect example of how cinema can tackle real-world subjects without preaching and instead invite reflection. It refuses to take sides, but it doesn't shy away from showing the flaws and virtues on both ends of the political spectrum. So, is it too divisive to win awards? Maybe. Or maybe it's exactly the kind of film the Oscars and audiences need right now. Either way, it gives me hope for the future of filmmaking. And this is a title I wholeheartedly recommend.